The Trump administration just appealed a ruling from a Trump-appointed federal judge that threw out an aggressive Justice Department lawsuit. That lawsuit had tried to sue all 15 federal trial judges in the state of Maryland. Now, the underpinning of that case, Maryland courts temporarily blocking the Trump administration from quickly deporting undocumented immigrants if they challenged their removals. Now, that ruling was on full display in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia this week. That's the undocumented immigrant who lived in Maryland, who is now in ICE custody as he challenges his deportation, threatened to go to Uganda. It's a country where he has absolutely zero ties.
Something important is beginning to happen inside America's conservative legal establishment. Judges appointed by Republican presidents, including some selected by Donald Trump himself, are increasingly refusing to give his administration everything it demands. That does not mean these judges have suddenly become liberals. It does not mean they have abandoned conservative ideology, but it may mean that some of them are no longer willing to place loyalty to Trump above the law, judicial procedure, and the credibility of the courts. And that distinction matters.
Joining us now, CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polans and CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. And Caitlin, let me start with you. This judge laid out some rather fiery statements in this rebuke of the Trump administration's unusual lawsuit. And just to remind people, this is a Trump-appointed judge.
Two-time Trump appointee, Thomas Cullen, a conservative royalty in the state of Virginia, brought into this special case, overseeing it in Maryland. And his opinion today was, get this out of this court, full dismissal. It doesn't belong here, and he wasn't going to let it go forward resoundingly. He writes, none of these cases that the Justice Department was arguing in this case support the executive's theory that it can sue federal judges simply because it disagrees with how they carry out their constitutional and statutory duties. To hold otherwise would run counter to overwhelming precedent, depart from longstanding constitutional tradition, and offend the rule of law. That's a pretty strong statement from Judge Cullen in this.
For months, individual rulings have been reported as separate legal setbacks. One court blocks an executive action, another rejects a controversial appointment, an appeals court questions the administration's argument, the Supreme Court places limits on presidential authority. But when these decisions are viewed together, a larger pattern begins to appear. This may be more than another bad week in court for Trump. It may be the beginning of a serious conflict between his administration and parts of the conservative judiciary. Call it a judicial civil war. Disagreement between courts is normal. District courts, appeals courts, and the Supreme Court frequently reach different conclusions.
Backing up what this was about is that it's not a normal case. This was in Maryland, where the chief judge of that district just earlier in the Trump administration said there are a lot of detainees in immigration proceedings coming to us with emergency requests to not have them deported so that we would be able to look at those cases. And the chief judge said, okay, we're going to pump the brakes for 2 days and just put a hold on the U.S. sending any of those people out of the country to a place like potentially Uganda or another country. The Justice Department, instead of appealing that, they sued the whole lot of judges in Maryland, all 15 judges on the federal district bench. Cullen, he's at the same level. And so he's saying, I don't have the ability to stop these other judges that I'm colleagues with, also trial level district court judges. And then also he says, this is not what the country is about with 3 branches of government. We should not just be fighting against each other, the justice system versus the chief executive. Another thing he writes, regrettably, this lawsuit effectively pits 2 of the branches against one another. One branch's alleged infringement on another's exclusive power does not license a constitutional free-for-all. He did note that the Justice Department, if they have a problem with this order from the judges in Maryland, they can appeal.
The real problem for Trump begins when judges repeatedly question whether his administration is following the law, presenting reliable evidence, or respecting basic legal procedures. Judges appointed by Reagan, Both Bush presidents and Trump himself have ruled against his administration. They have not suddenly become Democrats. Many remain deeply conservative. But conservative judges can still decide that a president exceeded his authority, that an appointment was unlawful, or that a prosecution was politically motivated and procedurally flawed.
Mark Wolf, a Reagan-appointed federal judge, is resigning after 4 decades on the bench, and he's sounding the alarm. In an essay published by The Atlantic this week, he wrote, quote, "The White House's assault on the rule of law is so deeply disturbing to me that I feel compelled to speak out. Silence for me is now intolerable." Judge Wolf shared additional context and more of his concerns when I spoke with him earlier today. Judge Wolf, welcome to the NewsHour. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and with some of the American people.
I should say you have spent 50 years with the Department of Justice and on the bench. You have seen a lot of presidents come and go. What is so worrying about this moment and this president that made you want to speak out?
Well, I think this president is unique and uniquely dangerous. When a new president is elected, he or she is entitled to set priorities for the Department of Justice. But we have an ideal that's crucial to me and many others of equal justice under law. And this president repeatedly, overtly directs the Department of Justice to prosecute his perceived political enemies at the same time that the Department of Justice is not investigating possible corruption by people close to the president and people who are doing things to profit the president and his family. So that's utterly inconsistent with, as I said, this fundamental principle of equal justice under law, to which I've dedicated my professional life for 50 years, and it's personal to me. It's deeply disturbing.
The greatest threat to Trump may not be liberal judges. His administration already expects their opposition. The greater danger is that Republican-appointed judges may no longer trust his Justice Department. Once courts begin doubting government lawyers, every case becomes harder. Judges demand stronger evidence, examine official statements more closely, and refuse to accept the administration's account without independent confirmation.
With breaking news, a Trump-appointed federal judge in Texas ruled that the president unlawfully invoked the Alien Enemies Act and blocked the administration from quickly deporting some alleged gang members. I want to quickly bring in Priscilla Alvarez, who's got the details. Priscilla, tell us more.
Dana, this is a significant blow for the Trump administration, which has wanted to lean on this sweeping wartime authority, the Alien Enemies Act. Well, a federal judge in Texas saying just moments ago that the president exceeded his authority by invoking this law that was intended to be used during wartime. Let me read you a snippet of what he said. He said, quote, "Allowing the president to unilaterally define the conditions when he may invoke the AEA, the Alien Enemies Act, and then summarily declare that those conditions exist would remove all limitations to the executive branch's authority under the AEA and would strip the courts of their traditional role of interpreting congressional statutes to determine whether a government official has exceeded the statute's scope." It goes on to say the law does not support this position. The position, Dana, that the administration has taken is that Tren de Aragua, that Venezuelan gang, is a foreign terrorist organization and that they are invading the United States. And so the administration has said that they can use the authority based on that. Well, this federal judge is not buying it, according to this opinion. And Dana, while there have been legal challenges across the country over the use of this act, this is again the first time that a federal judge is weighing in on whether or not the president exceeded his authority. ACLU's Lee Gallant told me in a statement that this is the first court, quote, to squarely rule on the fundamental question of whether a wartime authority can be used during peacetime, and properly concluded it cannot. Now, as far as for the immigrants who are detained in this judge's district, they cannot be deported under this authority as of now. But again, that is constrained to those in his district. But of course, Dana, this is going to launch perhaps several more steps in the court system when, again, this federal judge says that Trump exceeded his authority to invoke the Alien Enemies Act.
That distrust can spread. One judge criticized the government, another court cited the ruling, appeals courts begin noticing the pattern. A single dispute can quickly become an institutional credibility crisis. We have already seen tension involving federal prosecutors who refuse to participate in actions they believe were improper. Their message is clear. We may support conservative policies, but we did not agree to abandon the legal system. The same conflict is now appearing around immigration enforcement. Many conservative judges support stronger borders, detention, and deportation. But supporting immigration enforcement does not mean giving federal officers unlimited power. When officers use force, courts must ask whether the person poses a real threat, whether video supports the official story, and whether agents follow proper procedures.
Before I let you go, Priscilla, just on that note, is it just these particular people who are alleged to be part of a gang that can't be deported or sent to that notorious prison in El Salvador, or is this potentially more broad?
That's correct. It is those individuals, Venezuelan migrants, who have been alleged to be part of this gang, who are in this district, who cannot be deported under this authority. There are various other legal challenges playing out around the country as to others who may be eligible based off the administration's determination, but that is who it affects as of this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you so much, Priscilla. I appreciate that. Just to emphasize a couple of things. First of all, that it is a first. It's the first time we have seen a federal judge say that on its merit, the Alien Enemies Act should not be used in this case. But it's also the who of it all. Judge Fernando Rodriguez of the Southern District of Texas was appointed by Donald Trump.
He was back in 2017, the president's first year in office. And this is something that we really shouldn't have to say because a federal judge rules as they rule, but it has become part of the fight in all of this, if it's an Obama-appointed judge or whatnot. So it was a Trump-appointed judge. And the reason it's significant for what Priscilla was laying out there is because it's more difficult for the White House to sort of go after this judge, as he has been doing on Judge Boasberg here in Washington and others. But I think a bigger question is this, likely to end up in the Supreme Court or something, and does the White House follow this? As of now, the president, says that he does follow the rulings and orders of judges.
When government claims conflict with recordings or witness testimony, credibility becomes the central issue. Courts can order evidence preserved, require officials to testify, allow civil rights lawsuits to proceed, and investigate possible misconduct. That is why ICE could become one of the administration's biggest legal vulnerability. The political issue is immigration, but the judicial issue is credibility. A judge can support deportation while refusing to protect officers who violated the law or attorneys who misled the court. Trump's political movement demands loyalty to him. The judiciary is supposed to demand loyalty to the Constitution. Federal judges do not need Trump's endorsement or another election victory. They are not employees of the White House. That creates an unavoidable conflict. Trump expects loyalty to the leader. The courts are supposed to defend the law.
Kyle Boynton, prior to leaving the DOJ, I was a prosecutor with the criminal section of the Civil Rights Division. I started my career with the Justice Department in 2010 as a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
My name is Anand Petit. I was an immigration judge within the Department of Justice prior to my termination in September 2025.
My name is Brendan Ballou. I'm a former special counsel in the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department.
My name is Sean P. Murphy. I'm a former assistant United States attorney. I most recently worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Puerto Rico, but I work on a detail with the Capital Siege Section out of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia.
The Justice Department has long been a place and had a tradition of being apolitical in its approach to things. And I was increasingly seeing decisions being made within the Civil Rights Division for political reasons. And that troubled me.
I left because I had spent 2 years prosecuting January 6th rioters. On the very first day of Donald Trump's second term, he issued a pardon for, over 1,500 people who were accused of attacking the Capitol that day and the people inside. So it was obvious to me that Donald Trump was going to try to use the Department of Justice to enact vengeance, to enact violence against those who opposed him. And I thought that I could do more good on the outside than I could on the inside.
I decided that I needed to leave the Department of Justice because I saw the writing on the wall. There came a time shortly after Pam Bonie's confirmation as Attorney General of the United States that she sent out a series of memos. One of those memos in particular said that as AUSAs, we were expected to be the president's lawyers and do whatever he asked of us. And failure to do so would be to deprive the president of his attorneys. That didn't sit well with me then. It doesn't sit well with me now.
The harm that this administration is doing to the Department of Justice and to the rule of law generally in America is generational. It is going to take decades to recover from the damage that they have.
Some judges may still side with Trump. Others may decide that protecting their institution matters more than protecting one president. This does not mean every Republican-appointed judge will oppose the administration. Many will continue supporting conservative positions on immigration, regulation, and executive power. But they may refuse to defend actions that are clearly unlawful, poorly documented, or procedurally defective. Judges also understand that legal precedents outlive presidents. A power created for Trump could later be used by Democratic administration. A weakened Justice Department could remain weakened long after he leaves office. They are not only deciding what Trump can do today, they are deciding what every future president may be allowed to do tomorrow.
We've seen this administration hire many new deportation judges, as they're calling them, instead of immigration judges, to fill the role for the many, many immigration judges who they have since fired. And I am very concerned about the quality of these candidates.
We are dealing with extremists who are making decisions that the Justice Department should act on ideologies, should act in the interest of particular ideological beliefs. And I think that is what is so dangerous about this moment, is this extremist view that you're not holding a position of public trust, but you are actually a political actor who is supposed to be using the Justice Department for political reasons.
I'm very worried that we're not going to be able to attract the same level of talent that the Department of Justice has historically been able to attract. I'm also really
a growing number questioning his administration's legality, procedure, and credibility would mean something much larger. It would suggest that Trump is losing an institution he believed would protect him. The central question is now entering conservative courtrooms. Are these judges defending conservative law or simply protecting Donald Trump? Once that question is asked, personal loyalty is no longer enough. Evidence matters, procedural matters, credibility matters, and above all, the law matters. That is why conservative judicial resistance could become one of the greatest threats to Trump's power. Not because every MAGA judge has turned against him, but because some may finally be deciding that there are limits they will not cross.